This is the Money Down Pod. That is Sean White. Follow him on Twitter at DumpsterFireFan. I am Kayvon Izami at Kayvon_sports. Do me a favor and go and follow us on Twitter on the show at Money Down Pod and give us a like, comment, subscribe. It really helps us out and we would appreciate it a ton. So thank you everyone for tuning in on this wild NFL Tuesday. We talked a little bit about Russell Wilson. We talked a little bit about Aaron Rodgers. Now let's change scenes here and talk about something that is unfortunately near and dear to my heart because it's a Falcon, and that's Calvin Ridley and the bombshell news, which, by the way, if anyone is super happy today about all this news, it's Calvin Ridley because people have completely stopped talking about him, and now they're talking about everything going on in the actual NFL offseason world. So he's sitting back happening. He's hopefully finally off of Twitter. And everybody by now knows what happened. All right. Calvin Ridley is suspended for a year without pay by the NFL for gambling on the NFL. Now, to be clear, for those that haven't heard, if you've been under a rock for a couple days, he made one bet. It was actually multiple parlay bets for a total of $1,500. All of the bets involved betting on the Falcons, not against him. And the most important part of all of this is that he was not playing during that time. I cannot express enough. That is the most important part of all of this. If Calvin Ridley did this while he was playing, I don't care if it was for his team or against his team, I don't think he would play another down of football. I think it would have been really, really bad. The fact that he did this while he was not playing, to me, it's still bad. Like, I understand. I'm not stupid. I understand what the NFL did here by giving him a year. They cannot have this in their sport, so they had to make sure every player knows we're not messing around. We are not messing around. This guy bet $1,500. That is chump change for him. One bet in multiple parlays, one time, and we're suspending him for a year. Everybody and their mother knows that is the most egregious penalty to give him. But they did it because they had to send a signal. So I get that part. With that being said, I'm going to take this to a dark spot here, but it needs to be brought up. It's also absolutely ridiculous, and this is just the NFL in the nutshell. The NFL is going to suspend Greg Hardy, who threw a woman on the bed on a bunch of guns, 10 games. They're going to suspend Ray Rice for hitting a woman 6 games, but they're going to suspend Calvin Ridley a year for betting while he's not playing. It's the most NFL thing ever. That is the NFL in a nutshell, man. That's just what it is, because him betting, if it got out of hand and other players were actually doing it while playing, could actually affect their bottom line. And if we can't have that if they're the NFL. It's just so NFL, bro. Again, I want to be clear. They had to suspend him. I get it. Like, you can't have players betting on your own sport. You just can't. There's rules you have to follow. And when you're an NFL player, that's something you have to just deal with. And it's worth it with what you're getting paid and all that stuff. But it is so ridiculous to suspend him for a year, man. And I hope he appeals, and I hope they change it. I really do. Because to me, it's ridiculous. Calvin's an idiot. He messed up hard. And he really was so dumb yesterday on Twitter and all that stuff. But this to me is just too much.
I can see where you're coming from with that. But I kind of feel like the punishment fits. It's a year. You're barred for a year for gambling. And it's really a precedent thing. It's to set it there for, hey, don't do this, because this would affect everything. We can't have a game that looks rigged. That's what it is. It is what it is. You can't have gambling be enforced like that when gambling is what makes the NFL as big as it is in a way. So I understand the year. I do think they might appeal it and get it cut to maybe like a 8 to 12, somewhere around there. I feel like that could happen on an appeal. But again, it's an enforcement that makes you say, "Hey, I'm not going to put any money because I'm going to lose all of mine," type thing. I'm not going to do this because if I do, I'm going to lose millions of dollars on top of what I lose in my bet. That's kind of where you're looking at with that. And I understand the NFL coming down hard on it because we haven't really had a scandal like this since all the legal gambling came out. We haven't really had something like that happen. And I don't want to get into the asinine Emmanuel Acho Twitter feed. Like, let's be real, that was so dumb.
That's
I
so
mean,
dumb, bro.
Tyreek Hill does that about every catch. He's just trying to make a play. Like he runs backwards all the time. Like that's what when you're gifted at football, that's what you do. You sometimes run backwards to run forwards another 5 or 6 yards when you couldn't be there. And the fact that he was doing it on Ridley on a 0-0 game in the first quarter, I mean, yeah, that really impacted it, buddy. Oh my God, can't believe that first down there. But yeah, so stuff like that kind of
It's
drove me
so
crazy.
dumb.
But I'm gonna push back on you a little bit with this whole comparison thing. Here's where it bothers me with the comparison part, and I know that you're bringing up the dark stuff of Ray Rice and Hardy. Those are legal matters that are also getting solved off the field in court systems, whereas Ridley's is really affecting an actual game of football, and that's it. It's not an illegal what he did off the field. It's an integrity of the game standpoint thing. And that's where the NFL actually should be able to enforce more so punishment on people than in a legal matter that should be handled off the field as a harder enforcement as well, if you know what I mean.
I
You're getting
disagree
double.
completely.
I see. I knew we were going to go off on that.
Because the NFL can easily say, this is a legal matter. We're suspending you for a year or indefinitely until this gets figured out. You hit a woman. Like the NFL, there's no justifying how they did their suspension with some of these things. I get what you're saying with how they had to go about it with Ridley, but was it really affecting the game? He wasn't playing. Like in the future, if someone did it while playing, like if they want to talk about it's so hypocritical, bro. Brian Flores came on TV and said he was offered to get paid money to lose games, and the NFL immediately came back and said there's no merit in any of this before even investigating it. Then they had to walk back and say they're investigating it. Like it's just all outside of their mouths. And the main thing is what you said, that at the end of the day, if this got out of hand, it could hurt the bottom line because games could get fixed, and that means the NFL could lose money. And that's why they had to go heavy on this other than also setting a precedent. But it's all bullshit of how they come up with these rules of how to suspend and how to not.
Now, if you're going with the Dolphins ownership, I agree with you completely. That needs to be investigated more. That needs to be punished to the extent that Ridley got punished on that. I was more so talking about the Ray Rice and Greg Hardy legal matter that happened outside of the sport. Because if you think about it, this is how I look at it.
They're still their employees.
But this is how I look at it on that. If I got a DUI tomorrow, I don't get fired from my job necessarily if I could show up still. But if I destroy a bunch of company property, they let me go because it directly affects their company. And I'm doing that.
They have the right to fire you.
But most people don't. That's not how that is. If you break the law outside, you still get your lawyer and you go through the court system and everything. Most jobs just don't fire you off the bat on that, especially if you've been an employee for a while. It's when you really start messing with the actual company that you get let go of and get severely punished for it. And that's where I was making that comparison on that. Is when you deal with a legal matter off the field, I feel like the legal matter takes precedent off the field, and that's why they're throwing these random game suspensions out there. But as we saw, Ray Rice basically got barred from the league after that because of the video, which is
after everyone outlashed.
Exactly. He shouldn't have. And Hardy, the only reason he got a chance because Jerry Jones just threw it out there like that. So that's kind of where that is. Like Hardy still got to keep his job afterwards. That's what it is.
I get what you're saying. I'm just saying if that's the case, then why even give them any suspension? If it's just we don't deal with this, the court deals with it, why are they even giving them any suspension at all? The fact that they're even giving them a suspension tells me that they realize something is wrong here and they're just making up how many games they're going to do it. Like, I get your point. Like, what you're saying is facts in terms of legal and how it happens off the court. But at the end of the day, it's still a PR business too, and they are looking at their employees, and their employees are breaking the rules under their company, and they can do whatever the hell they want. And if they wanted to suspend Greg Hardy for a year like they should have, they could have. Same with Ray Rice. They could have. This time they did with Ridley, and it just doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah, I think it'll get reduced, to be honest. But again, like that's just a disagreement we have where it's like an agree to disagree thing. And I understand because I understand your point completely. It's just my point of view is his directly impacted the company he works for, whereas the other ones was off the field and was just a bad publicity thing. I mean, it was horrible what they did. Don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to go light on that, but you know what I mean. It wasn't direct. They weren't doing it to NFL like the NFL themselves. It was an off the field incident.
This also doesn't affect the NFL either. It wasn't.
But I'm curious. Like I said, I'm curious to see what Kamara gets now because he did the same thing off the field, beating up a dude at a nightclub. So that's where they're going to have to be consistent with that as well. So that's where I don't like them getting into the suspension business off the field either. So that's kind of the murky waters you deal with when you start punishing people for things like that.
But they have to.
See, they're going to have to do that. It's just weird how that works. It's not a bottom line punishment, and that is something the NFL could work on. Don't get me wrong. I completely see what you're saying. They need to have a set amount, but at the same time, it's hard to have a set amount because all of a sudden it becomes very subjective to people's opinions.
Yeah.
Like whatever happened with the Ray Rice, Greg Hardy situation, Greg Hardy could have been barred from the league if we had video of it, like Ray Rice. That's possible too. It's because we saw what happened with Ray Rice that it got so outraged, you know? That's really what it comes down to is if you see the video, the public has a different opinion of things than what you do. And I don't like having a subjective group make decisions like that. And that's kind of where we're at with NFL punishment. But that's a whole different subject that would need to get completely reworked. But I understand what you're saying and agree where you're coming from. It's just we disagree quite on how those punishments were doled out. I got you.
Yeah, no doubt. This is the Money Down Pod. I am Kayvon Izami. That is Sean White. Thank you for tuning in. One last topic here before we round out the day, and that is the Amari Cooper, and something we're also going to disagree on here as well. And that is the Dallas Cowboys are supposedly going to release Amari Cooper, and it's pretty interesting. To me, it's not that shocking. We kind of heard rumblings about it, so now we see it's actually going to happen, and I'll let you go first, Sean, on why you think that this is a bad idea by Dallas.
Well, I think the win-loss total kind of bears out with how Dak's numbers look and how Dak looks on the field with Amari and without Amari. He's clearly the go-to guy. Dak clearly likes to throw to someone who gets open and gets separation on routes. It's kind of like he doesn't really throw receivers open as much as some of the top quarterbacks do, and that's a little knock you can have on him. And Amari gets that separation with his routes. He's always in the place he's supposed to be at. And I get that we have the whole he can loaf around sometimes. He doesn't give a ton of max effort and things like that argument. But again, I believe he's the top receiver for them, and I believe he has the best connection with Dak if we look at it. I think they're just playing a scary game where you got Gallup coming off the ACL. You got Cedric Wilson, who's a free agent, just had the one good year. And then you're really, really, really relying on CeeDee Lamb, who's very talented. But again, he hasn't really played out there that much without Amari, and he's going to be that number one focal point guy now because you can double him now. You couldn't do that before because Amari would eat you alive. That's something we're going to have to look at. I just feel like Amari is that kind of receiver that Dak needs that gets open on the stem routes, on the slot fades, and you can move him around all the places. I feel like it's going to be a big loss to him. And that's something that I feel like it's going to really hurt Dak next year because he's going to be missing one of his more reliable targets out of the group that he has.
Yeah, no, so there's no doubt that Amari Cooper is a very good receiver and he helps Dak a lot. To me, and I went back and looked at the numbers, Dak is best, and this offense is best when they run a 12 personnel, when they do a 2 tight end set like New England and Baltimore does all the time. That's what they need to do because I think they have found something in Dalton Schultz. And I think Dalton Schultz is way more important to this offense than Amari Cooper is now. And mainly because I think they can use that money that they'll get from Cooper to help other places for the team that they need, that they need more depth in. And if you look at what they've done lately when they do a 12 personnel, kind of like the Patriots did, there was 3 offenses in the league that were most efficient this past year when running 12 personnel. It was the Patriots, number 1 by far. I mean, they were like way up there. The Ravens were 2, and then Dallas was 3. And I think Dalton Schultz has become a pretty damn good tight end. Look, again, I don't want this to make it a slander on Cooper because Cooper's good. Cooper's definitely good. I just don't think he does. I just don't think he changes much for them, to be honest. And to be honest with you, Sean, this might be more of a Dak thing, really, than a Cooper thing. I just don't think he is that big of a difference to the point now where he's getting paid so much. And you have something here in Schultz, you have Blake Jarwin, where you can fixate on that more and use Cooper's money to do more things with in the offseason in terms of building depth in other places like cornerback. If they could, I would get the hell rid of Ezekiel Elliott as well, because Tony Pollard's the better running back now too. But that's a whole different conversation. But that's my whole stance on this. I really just don't find him as big of a difference that he is for that money. And I think they found something here, as they showed in a small bit. They got to do it more with Schultz out there. And I think that's what they should do if the coaching staff will do moving forward.
Now, if you're making that argument of who's more important to them, Schultz or Amari, I actually do agree with you. I think it's Schultz. Okay. Schultz was the main inline guy, and Dak's very good at throwing seam routes. He can throw the seam very well. And Schultz was open a lot of times on that seam. I do wonder if they're going to start rolling coverage a little more with Cooper gone on that outside. Because what was deadly about the 12 is, if you think about it, solid O-line, back in the backfield. You got Lamb and Cooper on the outside with Schultz running the seam. Yep. That's a solid 12 personnel. Because if you look at the Patriots, where that is, why the Patriots 12 was so good is they could run the ball with 2 good running backs, and then their tight ends are Jonnu Smith and Hunter Henry. So their 2 tight ends are 2 really good tight ends. The same thing can be said with Jarwin and Schultz, and I do agree that Schultz was more important. They needed to keep him. I just wish they had been able to find a way to keep Amari as well. But that isn't to say that they can't work that out either. I do agree that they have a shot now with Schultz that you just say, okay, Gallup, you're going to be our go ball guy. You're going to be our deep threat. That's what it is. And CD is going to be the possession guy. It worries me with CD getting hit a lot being a possession guy, because he's a little small. And let's be honest, he can get a little shaken up like that. He only had the 1 catch in the playoffs last year. Can be a little shaky, but I do agree. You got to have Schultz, because that 12 personnel is what Dak likes to run. It's what Dak's been running his whole career. It's what Dak ran a lot in college. It's what Dak likes to do. He's good at 12 personnel, and they needed Schultz as that seam target. Completely agree with you on that. Let me ask you, where do you think Amari goes? Because I think there's kind of a conflicting thing here. Do you think he's made enough money to go chase a ring with a contender, or do you think he's going to be all a money guy again with this contract, and then maybe try to go to a contender after that, or try to build the team that he's with? Because a lot of people give different opinions on Amari. Is he in it for football? Is he in it for money? Does he really care that much? That's like a narrative gets thrown around. So I'm curious as your take of where he ends up.
Yeah, it's definitely a narrative, and it's something we're going to find out very soon. And real quick, because it's a great question, CD's got to step up now. CD was taken in the first round, high expectations. He has to step up and be that guy now, and I can't wait to see if he will. In terms of Cooper, I think he should go to a contender. I think he should. Will he? I don't know. I could see him being totally fine and kind of saying, you know what? I kind of want to be the alpha on the Jaguars or on the Bears or something like that. I could totally see him kind of saying that, but I also think it'd be awesome to say, hey, Chiefs, what are we doing? Let's go. Let's roll it out. It depends on what he wants. If I had to make a pick, a prediction, I think he goes after the money, if I had to make a prediction. But I really just don't know with him, so I would be shocked either way.
Yes, I was thinking, I was like, if you're going to go money guy, I think you're going to look at maybe the Jags or the Jets right there, because they're definitely going to be looking for receivers and definitely have the most money to pay out to them. But contending team-wise, I love that Chiefs connection you have right there. He would be such a solid complement to what they do with Kelsey and Hill. And then the other place to really look at, I do love the Patriots. If they'd go pay a guy like him, you just worry about Belichick wanting to pay another outside receiver. So that's something I'd look at. But him on the Patriots would be solid, and they have the Saban-Belichick connection, so that'd be a solid contending type team that I would look for as well. Those four would be the leading, two for if he wants the money, two for if he wants to contend.
No doubt. I like that a lot. This was the Money Down Pod. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. What a great show we had today. A lot of good arguments going around. That is Sean White. I'm Kayvon Izami. Follow us on Twitter, please, at Money Down Pod. We appreciate the support. Like, subscribe, and we will be back later in the week with another NBA pod, some draft talk, and much more. Thank you very much, and have a great rest of your week.